Welcome back, I'm Daft Painter, and I'm painting this Mindstealer Sphiranx for you today, but to save everyone the pain of listening to me pronounce that again, I'm just going to call it a Sphinx, okay? This was a wonderful model in many ways. I think the potential for highlighting is great, and a brilliant piece to practice on. I will focus on the highlighting quite a bit for this one, but will also show you a great way to paint gems and highly reflective surfaces. As usual, I primed this in grey, and the first step is coating all the skin in Macleod Sky. One thin layer is fine for me, but don't be afraid to get extra thin with 2 layers. The mane and the hair will end up white, so to get it clean and smooth I'm gradually working up to it, starting with Administratum Grey. It's a bit lighter than the grey primer from Citadel. I'm using Retributor Armour to base the armour panels. Next, I shade the mane by mixing Nuln Oil and water in a 50-50 mix. The added water will make it weaker so it won't turn the lighter grey too dirty or make the crevices too dark for a white tone. Straight after I finish, I take a brush that is dry and remove the excess of the outside flat areas. This will reduce the dirty look and will help with a smooth white when we paint over it. While this technique isn't absolutely essential to get a good finish, it's one of those small tricks that can put your skills up to the next level and make your model just that little bit better. I always try to include these little things in tutorials, because they help the most. I'll be dry brushing the hair in Ulthering Grey, which is one step away from white. Make sure you brush against the direction of the hair and not with it. It can be tricky to get the right amount of paint on your brush, as too much leaves streaks and ruins the finish. It's a lot more forgiving to have too little paint on your dry brush when doing something like this. Then you can just go over it again in a second coat if the colour isn't strong enough. There's nothing wrong in being safe. I dry brushed the skin in a 50-50 mix of Macleod Sky and Lothern Blue. Dry brushing is great, but you should be careful not to become over reliant on it. I'm only going to do this one layer of dry brush on the skin, mostly so I can see where the raised areas are for fine highlighting with brighter colours later. It's kind of like spotting where I need to paint, as this 50-50 mix won't make too much difference on the final finish. Now I can see where I need to highlight later, and doing this also survives through shading, which is the next step. Use Drakenhof Nightshade with a liberal amount of water and coat all the blue areas. This will create the dark shadows in the crevices. It takes a while to dry. I left mine overnight and came back the next day. Going away and coming back with a fresh set of eyes can help you spot things you might have missed or not thought about. It's also easier to spot when you need more of something, like highlighting or more blending. Now that's dry, I'm going back to the Macleod Sky and Lothern Blue in a slightly lighter tone than before, about 2/3 Lothern Blue this time. This is a heavy dry brush and will bring out the next brighter layer of the highlight. Now we're going to edge highlight and contrast the larger surfaces with Lothern Blue. I think this is the part I was most worried about, because if the area is too large it can be so difficult to get a smooth blend from dark to light on it without it looking a bit shoddy and out of place. But practice certainly makes perfect, and though I know I can achieve a great look, I've done this plenty of times before, I just need to do it more often to remove that doubt from my brain. Look carefully at how I'm picking out surfaces and how I move the brush across them. You only need to lightly drag the tip of the brush across the model. It's good for your muscle memory to be really light to begin with, then repeat the brush strokes, slowly pressing more on the model until you get that definition you really want. That's a great way to get confident at doing this. There's a difference between fine edge highlighting like on his feet and contrast highlighting like on his shoulders and back. You can see how blobby the highlight looks as I cover large areas on his back. At this stage it's kind of meant to look like this. It will be highlighted further with the edges and it will get blended together nicely later. Now I take the next blue up, which is Blue Horror. Take each Lothern Blue area and pick out the most raised areas of that patch. Just be careful, but some may not need any brighter highlights. and too much is more difficult to fix than too little. If you're not sure where to add lighter colours, I recommend looking at what I'm picking out, or being absolutely minimalistic and reviewing what you could do more every few minutes. I like to keep the least amount of paint on the brush that I can get away with. It's easier to blend the colours here and avoid making mistakes. I went back to some Calidor Sky just to blend the edges of the Lothern blue into the darker areas. I'm really pleased with how this one came out. Now that all the blue is done, I dry brush the white hair again in a pure white. Try not to get it on the blue, but if you do, it'll only blend in with the blue horror highlights and it will do no harm. I also painted the individual hairs across his body in white using a fine detail brush. I think that really brought the model together and blended the white skin and the white fur together. You might have noticed I have left the horns alone all this time. That's because horns are actually a really distracting feature to any model. Try to imagine a model that has prominent horns, maybe this one or a demon for example. Suddenly take them off. It completely changes the aesthetic of it. That's why I leave them to last, because the horns need to work well with the rest of the model. I decided a dark grey to white transition would suit the mystical blue greys going on in this model. The base of the horns are done in Mechanicus standard grey, which is a darker one, and then the middle is left as the grey primer, and the tips are covered in the Ministratum grey. Each part is roughly a third of the entire length of the horn. Then coat it in a slightly watered down known oil. I use Agrax Earthshade very liberally over the gold armour. I don't water this one down at all because it's been put on a metallic colour, which looks great with very dark recesses, and a dirty look that would ruin, say, a white colour actually makes metallic paints look worn and realistic. At this point, I also go over the straps in Tuscarora fur. Back to the horns, I'm lightly dry brushing the bottom and middle of the horns in Administratum Grey, which is the same colour as the tips. This will help blend the three colours together and look like a gradual transition rather than three separate blocks of grey. Finally, I highlight the tips with white, dragging the raised edges of the horn down further than the flatter areas. I went on to paint the edges and centres of the gold panels in gradually lighter golds, going with Gehenna Gold and then Auric Armour Gold. Finally, for the armour, edge highlight in Runefang Steel. Silvers are good for highlighting gold to show shine and reflection, but also wear and tear. The penultimate part are the jewels around his body. You can do these whatever rare gems you like, but I'll demonstrate the technique to get them really nice. It's the same for any colour. Start off with a strong bright colour, whether it be yellow, blue, green, red, anything like that. I'll demonstrate you this orange one on the tail. It's been based in Troll Slayer orange, and now I mix a little white in it just to make a dot in the centre of the gem so it's a slightly brighter orange. You can also do an even smaller dot right in the centre with just pure white on all of them, literally just a pinprick of a dot. I use the finest brush I have and take just the tip of it to paint the eyes a bright yellow, then dot the centres with black. Here's my final trick with gems. I use Citadel Paint's Ard Coat, which is a technical paint. I mix it half and half with water, then brush it over the gems. Hard coat is a varnish and it gives a natural shine to anything you put it on, so it's absolutely fantastic for gems. I water it down because hard coat can get really thick and gloopy and it can ruin detail if you put it on without water. There we go. I loved painting this one, and I think it's a great model for beginners and experienced painters alike. There's actually a lot you can do with the surfaces and details it has. It's also a really fun model to paint, and everywhere is easy to reach, so you're not falling over yourself trying to get under anything. I say this every video, but it would be really helpful if you liked, subscribed, or even commented your opinions on this video. Feedback is always helpful, and if you learn anything in this or you think you know someone who could use a video like this, then it's definitely worth your while subscribing. I aim to post every week. The last week I've moved into a new house though, so this video has been delayed, but I've got plenty of ideas to come. This has been Daft Painter. I hope you enjoyed this video and good luck with your miniature painting.